The cameras were already rolling. Lights blazed down from overhead like interrogators in a police drama. Millions of viewers were just tuning in for what they expected to be a feel-good morning segment featuring one of the biggest entertainers in the world. But no one watching Good Morning America that day, not the audience, not the production crew, and especially not Jennifer Lopez, could have predicted what would unfold live on air. At first, everything seemed routine. Jennifer, dressed in a cream-colored designer blazer with matching wide-leg pants and heels that clicked with every graceful step, strode confidently onto the Good Morning America set. Her hair was perfectly styled, her smile camera-ready, and her mood, at least on the surface, upbeat. She'd been through this dozens of times before. The producers had prepped her for a soft interview. 5, maybe 6 minutes talking about her new album, her upcoming tour, and maybe a quick story about life as a mom or working with Ben again. Her team had double-checked the question list. Her publicist had signed off. It was supposed to be safe, controlled, promotional. So when George Stephanopoulos leaned forward across the sleek glass table, microphone poised, with a glint in his eye that didn't quite match the scripted energy of a morning talk show, something shifted in Jennifer's posture, just a little. "Jennifer, you're here to talk about your new music," he began, his tone calm, measured, but with an undertone of something else. "But a lot of our viewers are wondering about the recent allegations surrounding your behavior on set and in the workplace. Can we talk about that?" There was a beat of silence. Not dramatic for the audience yet, just a slight hesitation, but anyone in the studio could feel it. Jennifer's carefully prepared smile faltered, ever so slightly. Her voice, still even, replied, "George, I'm very proud of my new album. It's a very personal body of work and—" George cut her off, gently but firmly. "Sure. But before we dive into that, I think it's important we address the criticism that's been making headlines. Several of your former staff members have come forward." Jennifer blinked. Slowly. In that instant, everything became clear. This wasn't an interview. It was an ambush. She adjusted in her seat, maintaining composure, but anyone paying close attention could see her fingers tightening around the armrest of her chair. George kept going, reading off a card that hadn't been approved, asking about reports of erratic behavior, mistreatment of staff, and what he referred to as a toxic workplace environment behind the J.Lo brand. Her publicist, standing off camera, gave a frantic hand signal. The floor director looked confused. Even the camera operators stiffened, sensing something was off. Jennifer stayed calm. At first, "George," she said with a practiced calm that had won her applause in countless interviews, "that's not what we agreed to talk about today. I'm here to speak about my music and upcoming tour." But George pressed on, now flipping through a stack of highlighted documents. "This is from a former personal assistant, Maria Santos, who says you were verbally abusive on multiple occasions. She says—" "You're reading gossip," Jennifer interrupted, her voice still steady, but eyes locked now. "And you're trying to pass it off as journalism." George smiled, that practiced, unflinching political news anchor smile. "We vetted these sources. These are real people with real experiences." Jennifer inhaled sharply, grounding herself. The camera zoomed slightly to a tighter frame, catching the flicker of tension in her expression. She wasn't backing down, but she wasn't going to play into his hands either. Not yet. "There's a difference," she said quietly, "between accountability and ambush." The tension was so thick it could have cracked glass. She turned to the camera directly. "I have worked in this industry for over 2 decades. I have always demanded excellence, from myself and from those around me. That doesn't make me a bully. That makes me a leader." George wasn't done. He leaned forward, papers now in hand, quoting alleged staff testimonies, each one darker than the last. "And Jennifer?" She refused to give him the collapse he was aiming for. Instead, she pushed back. "I came here in good faith," she said. "I trusted this platform. And now I see that trust was misplaced. The studio was dead silent. Viewers at home were texting friends, pulling out phones, recording screens. Something real was happening. Unscripted, raw, and more explosive than anything anyone expected at 8:45 a.m. Her voice dropped to a whisper, almost too soft for the microphone, yet unmistakably clear. You brought me here to tear me down. But George, you picked the wrong woman. Even George blinked. From the control room, the producer's voice crackled into the earpiece of the floor director. Do not, I repeat, do not cut to commercial. Let this play. The tension was television gold. Jennifer sat still, composed. Her legs crossed. Her hands clasped gently in her lap. Her face now revealed no emotion, just pure, silent strength. George shifted in his seat. You're denying the allegations then, he asked. I'm denying that this is the appropriate place for them, she said. You don't throw years of professional history under a bus with rumors on live television. That's not reporting. That's sensationalism. George raised a brow. So you're saying these former employees are all lying? I'm saying people leave jobs for all kinds of reasons. And people who are unhappy often look for others to blame. That doesn't make their stories fact. He pressed again. So if I brought out Maria Santos right now, would you call her a liar to her face? Jennifer leaned forward, her voice low and sharp. I'd say to her, Maria, if I ever hurt you, I wish you'd told me to my face when we worked together. Not through this spectacle. Another pause. The air was electric. The audience at home, hooked. And then she delivered the line that would explode across social media just minutes later. This isn't journalism, George. It's theater. And I won't play the villain in your script. George tried to interrupt, but she was already removing her microphone. You've had your moment, she said. Now I'll have mine. She stood, in silence, calm, graceful, and powerful. The floor director looked around. We cutting, he whispered. The producer's voice came through the headset again. No. Let it roll. Keep the cameras on her. Jennifer turned to the main camera and smiled. Not the showbiz smile, but something real, raw. To everyone watching, she said, if you've ever been ambushed, misrepresented, or had your character questioned by someone pretending to care, I see you. And I'll keep speaking my truth, no matter how uncomfortable it makes others. She turned toward the exit. And then, almost as an afterthought, she stopped and looked back into the camera one last time. Subscribe to Narrative Nest if you want the truth, not just the headlines. She walked off. The cameras followed her for another few seconds. George sat there, stunned. Alone. His carefully scripted takedown had been flipped, and the entire world was watching. The clip was only 42 seconds long, but within 10 minutes it was everywhere. Jennifer Lopez standing up, removing her mic, and delivering that final stare down before walking off the set of Good Morning America like she had just walked off a battlefield. No panic. No tears. No apologies. Just raw power. Someone from inside ABC must have leaked the raw studio feed, because a cleaner version, wide shot, full sound, zero edits, was posted to a gossip Twitter account barely 2 minutes after the cameras stopped rolling. Within 15 minutes, it had racked up over 1.8 million views. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag JLo ambushed. Hashtag George exposed. Hashtag GM agate. Hashtag narrative nest. And before George Stephanopoulos could even finish his next segment, a pre-recorded bit about summer travel, his name was trending across every social media platform. Inside the ABC studios, chaos was unfolding behind closed doors. The executive producer of GMA was red in the face, clutching a printout of the original interview rundown that had been approved by Jennifer's team. Where did he get those quotes? Who cleared this? Who the hell let George go off script? George was in his dressing room, pacing, still wired with adrenaline and trying to convince himself he hadn't just torched a 40-year career in broadcast journalism for the sake of a tough question. But he had. Everyone knew it. Meanwhile, Jennifer's team had moved fast. Before the broadcast was even over, her publicist released a one-sentence statement. Jennifer Lopez was invited on GMA to discuss her new album. What she received instead was a betrayal of trust and a public ambush. She will not be silenced, and she will respond on her terms. That sentence hit like a thunderclap. Comments flooded ABC's Instagram page. The show's official Twitter account was ratioed so hard with criticism that they locked replies for the first time in years. And while George was trying to decide whether to go on air again or disappear for a few days, Jennifer's team was already writing a response video. But here's the twist. She didn't post it on Instagram. She didn't call TMZ. She didn't run to her publicist to spin a press conference. She posted it, directly, on her brand new YouTube channel, Narrative Nest. The video went live at exactly 2:15 p.m. It was titled simply, The Truth. No clickbait. No all-caps drama. Just a frame of her, seated alone, wearing a black blouse, her hair tied back, no glam, no lighting crew. Just a single camera and a woman with nothing to hide. She looked into the lens and spoke with the same quiet fire she had shown on live TV. If you've already seen this morning segment on Good Morning America, then you already know I walked away. I walked away because the conversation was no longer about music, or truth, or transparency. It became a performance. A gotcha moment. A betrayal. So now I'm here, not with a PR team writing my lines, not on a talk show with commercial breaks. Just me, speaking directly to you. She paused, letting the silence say what scripted interviews never could. I've spent 25 years in this industry, she said. I've been called talented. I've been called a diva. I've been called inspiring. I've been called difficult. And now today, I've been called a bully. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with control. Like someone balancing fury and grace on the edge of a razor. Here's what I won't do. I won't pretend these stories don't matter. I won't tell you that people who worked for me didn't have tough days. I'm human. They're human. But what I will not do is sit silently while a national news anchor weaponizes those stories to humiliate me on live TV under the banner of journalism. The video was 8 minutes long. Every word felt personal, unfiltered, measured, but powerful. And in the final 30 seconds, Jennifer did something no one expected. She named names. I've worked with amazing people. I've also had to let people go who didn't meet expectations. That's not bullying, that's leadership. But Maria Santos, my former assistant, knows exactly why she left. And it wasn't because I screamed at her. Now it was war. By the end of the day, dozens of A-list celebrities were chiming in. Viola Davis reposted Jennifer's video with the caption, "Every woman in this industry knows this game. Bravo, J. Lo." Selena Gomez commented, "This is why we need to own our stories. Proud of you." Even Taylor Swift posted a cryptic snake emoji, and fans took it as clear support. Meanwhile, George Stephanopoulos remained silent. But ABC wasn't. By 7 p.m. that night, ABC News released a carefully worded statement. "We stand by the integrity of our reporting. Our hosts are encouraged to ask honest questions. However, we regret the breakdown in communication regarding the segment with Ms. Lopez and are reviewing our editorial protocols moving forward." In other words, we're not apologizing, but we know we messed up. That wasn't enough for the public. By the next morning, thousands of viewers had signed a petition demanding George Stephanopoulos issue a personal apology, or step down from the GMA anchor desk. Viewership dropped 11% the next day. And every time a segment started, the live chat on YouTube would fill with #JLo was right and #NarrativeNest. But Jennifer? She didn't gloat. She went quiet again. For 24 hours. Then came the second upload, and this one wasn't just about her. Titled The Industry Standard, it opened with a simple question. Why do we punish women for the same traits we praise in men? She told stories from behind the scenes. Moments when she had to fight for equal pay, fight for final cuts, fight to be respected as a producer, not just a performer. She named producers who told her she was too intense. She quoted executives who said things like, "You're intimidating to younger staff." And she played audio clips, real ones, of former assistants who had praised her leadership privately while now appearing in hit pieces. The comments were flooded with stories. My boss once yelled at me in front of 12 co-workers. He got promoted. I cried in the bathroom. Thank you for saying what so many of us feel, but can't risk our jobs to say. I didn't like you before. Now I respect you more than ever. Jennifer had done something rare. She turned a personal attack into a public mirror, and people were seeing their own reflections. Meanwhile, inside ABC, George was unraveling. The other anchors were being polite, but distant. Sponsors were calling. Even the internal employee board was talking about whether his ambush violated internal ethics guidelines. And then, 2 days later, came the final blow. 60 Minutes aired a segment called Celebrity Ambush Culture, when journalism goes too far. It featured a panel of media experts dissecting George's interview frame by frame, showing where the questions became accusations, where tone turned from inquiry to attack, and where the goal shifted from information to humiliation. One line from the segment went viral. This wasn't journalism. This was entertainment violence disguised as truth. Ouch. And through it all, Jennifer never cursed, never threatened, never sued. She just kept uploading. In her third video, she said this. I know this won't be the last time a woman is cornered on live television. I just hope the next time it happens, she knows she can speak up and walk away with her head held high. By the end of the week, Narrative Nest passed 2 million subscribers. And George, he cancelled his next 3 appearances. The power had shifted. The story was no longer his to control. 3 days had passed since the world watched Jennifer Lopez walk off live television, leaving George Stephanopoulos in stunned silence and turning the media landscape upside down. 3 days. That's all it took for Jennifer to shift the entire narrative. 3 days for Narrative Nest to become more than just a YouTube channel. It had become a movement. By now, nearly every major entertainment outlet had weighed in. The Hollywood Reporter called it the most powerful takedown of media ambush culture in a decade. BuzzFeed dubbed it a masterclass in controlled fury. The New York Times ran a front-page op-ed titled, When Celebrities Fight Back and Win. But while the public stood captivated, behind closed doors, chaos brewed. ABC had launched an internal ethics review. Sources leaked to Page 6 that network executives were furious that George had freelanced during the interview, abandoning the agreed script and blindsiding a guest who had been promised a safe promotional segment. Legal was involved. PR was involved. And worst of all, advertisers were involved. 2 national sponsors pulled ads from the next episode of Good Morning America, citing an unexpected deviation in brand values. George was feeling the heat. He tried to stay calm, at least in public, appearing at work, showing up on camera with a neutral smile and perfectly pressed suit. But the energy had changed. Producers kept their distance. Robin Roberts barely made eye contact. The control room felt colder. Then came the letter. An open letter, published by an anonymous group of former ABC producers, some current, titled We've Seen This Before. It wasn't just about George. It was about power, manipulation, and the systemic bias baked into the industry. It read, when women raise their voices, they're called unprofessional. When men raise theirs, they're called passionate. What George did to Jennifer wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a reflection of how this system works, who gets to ask the questions, and who has to answer without defense. The letter went viral. Then the twist. A second former employee of Jennifer Lopez stepped into the spotlight. But this time, it wasn't to tear her down. It was to defend her. His name was Emilio Vargas, a former stage assistant who had toured with Jennifer for 4 years. He posted a video titled "The Truth About Working for J. Lo" and tagged Narrative Nest directly. His video was raw, filmed from his apartment, no fancy production, just truth. "I worked with Jennifer from 2017 to 2021, he began. She never screamed at me. She never disrespected me. Was she intense? Absolutely. She demanded the best. But she gave it too. She knew our names. She remembered our birthdays. When my mom got sick, she paid for her hospital stay without even telling me until later." He paused, then added something that struck like lightning. "You don't have to like her. But don't lie about her." Comments flooded in. This is the kind of testimony George should have aired. Why didn't they interview Emilio before attacking her? Funny how the positive voices are only being heard now. Narrative Nest reposted the video. Jennifer shared it to her 250 million Instagram followers with a simple caption. "Truth doesn't need spin. Just witnesses." George was cornered now. ABC brass called him in for a private meeting. It was tense. He tried to defend himself. "I was doing my job, asking questions no one else would ask. But they weren't having it. You went rogue, George. You torpedoed the interview, destroyed trust with a guest, and cost us millions in ad dollars." George leaned forward. "She's manipulating the public. This Narrative Nest thing, it's pure image control." The executive didn't flinch. "And what you did wasn't?" George sat back, speechless. But he wasn't done yet. That night, he made a bold move. He emailed Jennifer Lopez. No assistants. No legal team. Just one line. "If you're willing to talk, face to face, no producers, no scripts, I'll listen." To his surprise, she replied. 2 words. 1 condition. They met the next evening at a private media club in Manhattan. No cameras. No microphones. Just 2 people at the center of a storm, sitting across from each other in a quiet corner booth. George was the first to speak. "I don't want to pretend I didn't screw this up," he said. "But I didn't come here to apologize for asking questions." Jennifer folded her hands. "Then why did you come?" "To understand," he said. "Because I don't know how I became the villain. I'm not a bad guy." She nodded slowly. "Neither am I." Silence stretched between them. George sighed. "We're both professionals. But what happened on air, it felt personal." Jennifer looked him dead in the eye. "It was." And for the first time since that morning, George didn't have a comeback. "Do you think I'm a bully?" she asked. George hesitated. "No. I think I mistook strength for arrogance. And I assumed that because I could challenge you, I should." Jennifer's tone was calm, but cutting. "You thought you'd catch me off guard and it would make great TV. You didn't expect me to stand up and walk out." "No," he admitted. "I didn't." She leaned in. "That's the problem." George looked down. "I lost control of the interview." "No," Jennifer said softly. "You lost control of the narrative. And that scared you." Silence again. This time, it was heavier. "I'll go public," George said suddenly. "Tell people we talked. That we cleared the air." Jennifer shook her head. "Don't." George blinked. "Why not?" "Because that's still you controlling the story. Let the public decide. They already are." And just like that, she stood up again, not storming out, Not breaking down. Just leaving with the same quiet authority that made the world take notice in the first place. George sat alone, wondering if his time in the spotlight had finally come to an end. By the time Monday morning arrived, Narrative Nest had passed 5 million subscribers. There were documentaries being pitched, podcast deals, talk show offers, newsroom debates. But Jennifer Lopez didn't rush to cash in. She didn't sit down with Oprah. She didn't go on Fallon or Kimmel. She stayed quiet. Again. She understood something the industry had forgotten. Silence is a weapon when everyone expects noise. George Stephanopoulos, meanwhile, returned to Good Morning America with a carefully written monologue that walked the line between apology and damage control. He stared into the camera and said, "In journalism, we aim to ask the hard questions. But sometimes, in our pursuit of truth, we cross a line. I want to acknowledge that my recent interview with Jennifer Lopez did not reflect the spirit of balance and professionalism we strive for. I regret that. Polite, controlled, safe. But it didn't land. Because what the public had witnessed wasn't just a misstep, it was a takedown attempt. And Jennifer hadn't just survived it. She'd flipped the script, rewritten the rules, and shown others how to do the same. That week, Narrative Nest released one final video. No music. No dramatic cuts. Just Jennifer, seated at a table, holding a folded piece of paper in her hand. She didn't unfold it. She didn't need to read a script. She knew exactly what she wanted to say. "I've been quiet the last few days," she began, "not because I didn't have more to say, but because sometimes you need to give people space to think for themselves." She looked straight into the camera. We live in a time when headlines hit harder than facts, where accusations travel faster than the truth, and where, too often, the public forgets that celebrities, even the powerful ones, are still people. She paused. "I don't want this platform to be about revenge. I don't want to live in that energy. What happened to me was wrong, yes, but I won't let it define me. I won't let it define him. And I won't let it define how we talk to each other in this culture." She unfolded the piece of paper, not to read it, but to show what was written across the top in her handwriting. "Narrative is not equal to truth." Jennifer continued, her voice soft but unshakable. "When I started Narrative Nest, I didn't know what it would become. I just knew I was tired of watching stories be twisted until the truth was unrecognizable. I wanted to speak without a filter, to respond without fear, to create something honest." She leaned forward. "If you've been following this journey, whether you're a fan or a critic, I hope you took something from it. I hope you asked yourself what kind of world we want to live in. One where people are ambushed on live television, or one where we're brave enough to let others speak for themselves before we judge." A beat of silence. Then, "This is the last video I'll make on this situation. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it's already done its job. It's shown us all how fragile truth can be, and how strong we become when we own it." She gave the smallest smile. "To every woman who's ever been called too much, every man who's ever been told not to feel, every person who's ever been edited into someone they're not, this platform is for you." And then she added, almost as if speaking to George directly, "I forgive the ambush, because it gave me the opportunity to finally say things I've held in for years." Then, with a voice as calm as it was firm, she said the final words. "If you believe in stories that tell the truth, not just sell the scandal, subscribe to Narrative Nest. This is only the beginning." And the screen faded to black. No outro music. No credits. Just silence. And that silence spoke louder than anything George had said all week. In the days that followed, Narrative Nest inspired a wave of other celebrities to speak up. Not through publicists or PR statements, but through their own voices. A-list stars released behind-the-scenes truths about interviews they were cornered in. Others opened up about how they had been told to stay quiet or risk losing jobs. One even thanked Jennifer in an open letter. "You didn't just defend yourself. You defended all of us who've been told to sit there and take it." George, meanwhile, remained at GMA for a while. But the aura had changed. There was a weight in the room now, one that couldn't be ignored. Producers began requesting other hosts for celebrity interviews. Sponsors favored segments with other anchors. He was still respected, but no longer untouchable. And in an industry where reputation is everything, that shift was permanent. 6 months later, he quietly stepped down from the anchor chair. Not in disgrace, but certainly not in triumph. Jennifer never mentioned his name again. She didn't need to, because the audience remembered. They remembered the way she stood, the way she walked off, the way she didn't break. Not once. And years from now, when people talk about the moment everything shifted, when celebrities began reclaiming their narratives, when media culture had to reckon with itself, they'll point to that morning on Good Morning America. They'll point to the moment when the cameras were rolling, the world was watching, and Jennifer Lopez refused to play the victim. She wasn't just a guest. She became the author. And the rest was just noise. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching this entire story. If you believe in truth over headlines, in dignity over drama, subscribe now to Narrative Nest and join a growing community that refuses to be silenced. Because here, the story is ours.